All right, everybody, this is Tim, and we're going to try something a little bit different today. I got Alokov on Skype, and we're just going to start talking about social contracts and how you start out with a game and where you go from there. So, Alokov, you want to say hi?
Hello.
So, social contracts, that's something that I think I've kind of excluded or ignored to my own detriment before, and it sounds like you've definitely used them more than I have, so I was curious to see what you thought of them.
I haven't necessarily used them well. That's mainly because I haven't been in many games since I found out about them, but I certainly will be in the future. And it was brought to my forefront because Mage kind of is a game that only runs when you have a social contract, because it can go so many different ways. You have to pick, this is what the way we want to take this game, these are the kind of characters, like broadly, the kind of characters you can have, and the kind of things that will be expected that you'll be interested in, so you don't get, like, you wanting to run a game about finding occult knowledge and buried Atlantean secrets, and they decide to play a game of the Resistance trying to kill the Exarchs, which would kind of wreck your plot. And I know one of my games was, my Requiem for Rome game was torpedoed because I wanted to run a game about fall of Rome and the barbarians invading and the loss of structure and having to, basically were all playing characters who were in the system, and so rather than going, oh, that must mean they want to play with the system and, like, focus on the Roman politics and stuff, I thought, oh, good, I can just play out the theme of the structure being destroyed and you having to find your way in the world without the structure that you've grown up with. But, which would have been interesting to me, but the whole game started being taken in the direction of trying to save Rome, which I admired them for their intelligence and interest and cool ideas they came up with on how to try and save Rome, but at the same time I was going, I don't want to go this way. So eventually I just told them that, and we decided to end the game, because we were both, they really didn't want to deal with the fall of Rome, and I didn't really want to deal with the saving of Rome, so we moved on. But if I'd had a social contract saying, this is the section of the game that I want to play, or want to deal with, then I would have known ahead of time, they don't want to deal with this, let's find a new game where we have a theme that we both like.
So yeah, with that, I guess what you're saying is, like, there's so many possibilities and opportunities that sometimes it can just pull the party in multiple ways, and to try to kind of avoid, I guess, kind of what happened to my Changeling game, where every character had their own idea for what the campaign was going to be, what their interests are, and they really just spread to the four corners of the earth, and just I ended up running like 6 solo adventures at times, just like everyone wanted to do their own thing. And if I would have sat down, I think, beforehand and said, okay, I want to run a Changeling game, what kind of game does everyone else want to play in, and then we'll try to focus on that. Maybe I should have done that, I guess, huh?
Yeah, and that's going to Changeling. That's what we did with the Changeling game that we started after Requiem for Rome imploded, was the GM just sat us all down and said, okay, you are going to be in a motley, and you're going to be doing something, you're going to have a common cause that you all want to do. What is that going to be? So we had plenty of time and plenty of leeway to hash out whatever theme we wanted for our motley, but the point was our group was coherent and all wanted to do vaguely the same thing. We could all be of different courts, we could all have different personal things, like I wanted to go find the people I escaped Arcadia with who ended up in another city, and find my sister who was in witness protection, and someone else was a psychiatrist who wanted to help people with psychological issues or whatever, but we all were interested in helping the destitute Changeling population of the city find homes and just make sure they had food and stuff. So basically you could always present a mission. If things started getting too haywire and we were all doing different stuff, you could always present a mission of, hey, there's this homeless guy who needs help. And then we'd all have an instant hook to go do stuff together to try and help him.
Yeah, I could see definitely having some cohesion, especially in Changelings, since they're all paranoid and there's all this stuff going on that's outside of their
and the
perception.
point of Motleys, I think, I mean, obviously the point of Motleys was to make that, alleviate that, but Motleys especially were put over as, unlike Coteries, which Andrew Wood has dissed so many times, rightly, as like this thing where, obviously, Coteries are meant as the same mechanic, where you have a reason for your party to be together, but Motleys and Changeling make a lot more sense in fluff, because Changelings in general tend to band together, whereas vampires in general tend not to. So, while I have played in vampire games with coherent coteries, it was always, we had to find a theme that would fit us together, and while we sometimes did, it was not as easy as with Changeling, where you can just go, you're in a motley. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Lots of Changelings are in motleys.
Yeah, I had a hard time convincing my players that that was the case. A lot of them really took the paranoia level, and maybe they just read up too much into that, where they, yes, we're all changelings. Yes, we should band together to survive, but at the same time, there was actually certain actions that happened in the game where whatever trust was there was shattered. So
And that's the point of
yeah,
pledges, really. That's I understand. I would play up that in a changeling game where they weren't pledged for stuff. Like if they hadn't had a freehold pledge, we are not going to screw each other, then I would have definitely played up the you don't know if this guy's going to stab you in the back thing. But once you've had a pledge, whether it be a freehold pledge or especially a motley pledge, because motley pledges tend to be more specific, of we are mystically bound not to mess with each other and cause each other problems, then there's really no reason or need or ability to be paranoid, because the weird itself is making sure that you cannot get screwed by this person.
yeah. I think my inexperience with the system and setting kind of showed through in that respect. I probably could have pushed that harder or made them make some sort of agreement, or
Yeah.
maybe just talk to one player and said, okay, you need to convince everybody else to agree to this pledge, and sort of have the weird be the glue that keeps the group together.
Yeah, and I think the good way around that is what RGM did, which is you say initially, we're going to make sure that this. You look at what the problems of the game tend to be, either what your group tends to do that wrecks games, or if you see an aspect of the setting like the changeling paranoia that, hey, this could easily be taken too far and wreck the game. You just say, look, this could be considered a problem. I understand you getting into it, but here's how the setting deals with it, and here's how we're going to deal with it, and you give them some leeway, like why is your motley together, but don't just let them go, well, I don't know, we're not, and then wander off. Give some concrete rules where your motley is going to be together and you're going to have a common thing you want to do. I'm just open as to what that is.
I think also I was having a hard time because for me, when I read Changeling, I really liked that aspect of being taken against your will and being held prisoner. But I think 3 of the players made backgrounds, and I told them to make interesting backgrounds, but they made backgrounds and they sort of went the opposite with it. They sort of their characters liked being there. They liked the experiences more than they hated the experience. So 3 of them wanted to actually go back, so that was tough.
Oh, well then that would be Autumn Court. That's their kind of shtick, is we liked it, or we like parts of it. I would have said to them, instead of just, you must hate it, I would have said, well, you can be Autumn Court, you can miss it, but there was stuff there that you don't like, and you should need to flesh that out more. What was it that made you run away in the first place? What did you not like, and how has that messed you up? As well as having the interesting bit of, well, I also liked this. Like, make them be more specific about it. I liked this, but I didn't like this. This was interesting, I learned from this, but I also got scarred by this.
Yeah, in their backgrounds they really didn't describe anything bad, and I was trying to politely ask them to flesh that out, but I think maybe I should have been more direct. Like, well, and we're talking about the social contracts thing. Like, maybe I should have said, you can have liked things, but there has to be something like really bad that like broke the camel's back. This was the thing that made you want to leave, want to flee, whatever. And I really think it was a good learning experience for me. Failing that badly at running a game.
Yeah, and Requiem for Rome was for me too. I mean, my players didn't think I failed, but I did because I didn't have fun. So, yeah, and that wasn't their fault. That was because I was running the wrong game and not running it well, and being stressed about not understanding it or not really being interested in the themes. So now I know. Okay, that's why I'm wary of Mage, because it's like, well, as I said, I have the conflict of this is awesome, but what do I do with it? And so I'm afraid but what do I do with it will turn into the same thing that Requiem for Rome did, where I initially think it's cool, and then I have no idea what to do, and that kind of kills the game.
I think my problem was I really liked the Changeling setting. I really liked the idea. I really love the themes, and I think there's parts of that book that really kind of achieve something greater than RPGs. There's a few quotes in there that are really powerful, and I love those themes, but I think where I stumbled too is that some of the rules were a little bit crunchy in places, and as you know, I'm not really a big... I more like the rules to do what they're supposed to do and then get out of the way. And for me, every time I read Changeling, I just think there's more rules than are necessary. But maybe that's just my style. I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of your style. I like to think of myself as the same way, but I when I found World of Darkness, it was like, click, rules that get out of the way. I mean, I never read the core book even, much less statted anyone out. And every time I needed a guy, it's just, how inept or how adept do I want him to be? Okay, he's this. And then I would sometimes change stats on the fly, although my group should not know that. But
hey, do what you gotta do, man.
Yeah, like with a ghoul that we were fighting, I was like, oh, and he happens to have this discipline, which I didn't know he had before. I usually wouldn't change, like, he has one less dice or one more dice than he would used to last turn, because that would be blatant, because they could look on the dice roller and see how many I rolled.
Oh, I see.
But in terms of the ghoul, oh, I thought he was Deva, well, now he's Maquette, because I want him to have celerity so he can get away. And that turned into the best thing yet, because they thought he was a vampire, and so they shot him in the heart, and then I described, oh yeah, and his heart blows up, and there's blood all over. Oh fuck, he was a ghoul. That became a byword. Now every session almost, we have the quote of, I can't believe it was just a guy! Because that's the first thing they said was, it was just a guy.
Yeah, I really like the old World of Darkness system and the new World of Darkness system. For me, I think where I get uncomfortable is when they bring in, like, the vampire, werewolf, changeling, those books.
The template stuff.
The template stuff that adds onto it. I think, I don't know. Maybe I wish it was closer to the core book with a few bonuses, a few rolls, and mostly setting. I think that's where I get. I really like the core book. You know, I would.
Yeah,
I've
I
read a
was
few
that way
one
with
shots.
Werewolf too. I think it depends on kind of the setting and how you feel. Because for me, Werewolf was an interesting setting, but too crunchy, and Changeling was not too crunchy, and Mage so far has not been. So I think part of it can be alleviated if you're really into the setting, but also if you're, like, you seem to be more rules light than even I am. So for you, Changeling was too crunchy despite loving the setting. For me, Werewolf was too crunchy because I didn't love the setting that much, and so I was less able to overlook the problems of the rules.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I definitely. I mean, I'll give an example. I just ran an adventure, and I did some prep work, but the prep work only really came into play like 3.5 hours into the session. The rest of it was totally on the fly, and I totally just made stuff up as I went. And the players probably didn't realize that. Like, if they were, as they're going, and that's good, I think. They would make choices, and then I would totally just riff off whatever they wanted to do. And I told one guy afterwards that I just made up everything for the first 3.5 hours. He's like, "That's crazy." It's like, how did you do that? How do you? And for me, it's hard to explain. I think when there's crunchy systems and light systems, I tend to be able to be more fluid and being able to shoot from the hip with those systems. And I think that's why I had a little bit of a hard time with Changeling. I had a harder time thinking, okay, well, what pledges does this guy have? What contracts? What court is he? Things like that.
Yeah, and court and pledges and stuff are easy for me because for me it's all based on, if it's stuff based on the guy's philosophy and personality, particularly philosophy and psychology, because that's what I'm good at coming up with.
Yeah, you seem really good at that stuff.
Yeah, that's why court, because Changeling, all that crunch seems to be based on that kind of stuff. Like, he is a Darkling because he went through this, and going through that made him think like this. So, I start with, I want a guy who's like this, who is paranoid, who is skittish, who runs away. Oh, he's a Skitterskull, because that's what they do. That's why he became one, because he had to do that in Arcadia.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't think I would have came up with that myself. Huh.
Yeah, and like Court, well, I want him to be really angry. Oh, he's a Summer Court. I want him, or it's sometimes based on, I want a guy who can facilitate this. Like, if I want a guy to convince them to go fight something, then I need a Summer Court guy, because that's what they do. Or if I want somebody who convinces them to go investigate something in the occult, oh, he's Autumn Court, because they're all into that.
Yeah.
But also just, I want a character who acts like this, and that helps me get into character too, if I know. I don't think in terms of, this guy needs to say this. I think in terms of, this guy is like this, and therefore he will do this. Like, the best plot thread I ever came up with, well, second to it was just the guy thing, was they wanted to talk to a senator, like, random senator.
Okay.
I had no senators left, or had created, except one guy who had been in a debate and had taken the side of, we don't need to go deal with the Lankaea Sanctum yet, because whatever. And I thought, why would he do that? oh, because he's a Julii, he's cushy in his little position of power, and he doesn't want anything to shake that, even if it's true. And then I went from there to, how can his psychology affect this current interaction? Well, one of the players is a Maquette, an Egyptian Maquette. He must be racist against Egyptians, because that will affect how he interacts with her. I wanted some way where his psychology could show through very quickly. And so doing that allowed me to do that. And then he became more and more rapidly racist until eventually he spawned an entire neo-Nazi vampire sect that became a major antagonist because they made him. The characters went through trying to get his once they found out what a douchebag he was. They went through this elaborate way of trying to get his child to be there when they, through disciplines, convinced him to spill his guts on how much of a douchebag he was, and they thought, oh, his child will be disgusted and will discredit him or whatever. It will be a major thing for us. We'll have a guy on our side. Instead, I thought, this guy is going to only embrace people who he already knows are in his philosophy or as douchebaggy as him. So when his child got there, I played out his child almost is perfectly cool with it, and it's why are you hanging out with these people? And then when he frenzied finally, after realizing he spilled his guts, to an Egyptian, he frenzied. And then his child frenzied too, because you ticked him off, you must die. And then of course they had a whole group of his buddies who were all this sect in the Senate that was ultra conservative, that they now had this huge antagonist group that I could draw from whenever I wanted to. So that's a good example of psychology and how psychology can lead to everything, because I knew from that who his friends would be, what his goals were, what his disciplines and clan would be, because Julii makes the most sense for a guy who's like that. So
yeah, so it sounds like philosophy would probably be a good idea to talk about while you're coming up with these, even before the campaign. What kind of philosophy is your character? What does your character really believe in? Is that really gonna go against this character's grain? How are you gonna deal with that in character in the game? Maybe try to just like I said, social contracts are kind of new to me. It seems like kind of just a funneling or try to weed out problem areas before they happen. And
yeah, it's stuff that people have been doing for a while. They just didn't have a name for it or didn't think of it. So social contract is the name that has been given to it, or that I have heard it described by.
Yeah, I've heard it before too. I don't have much experience with it, so I was kind of curious about it.
And there are social contracts that are in-game and out-of-game, or game-related and non-game related, because the first thing you said was they're OOC stuff. Well, they can be. They can also be themes. They can be both, really. It depends.
Huh, okay.
Most groups have a social contract that you're not going to be disruptive, that you're not going to build characters that don't work together at all.
Don't be a dick.
Yeah, don't be a dick in general. Don't be a rules lawyer unless you cultivate that for some reason. Or whatever. I mean, different groups have different things, but there are basic ones that all groups have without even knowing what they are or that they're there.
I think, too, a lot of people have played together with the same group of people, so maybe some of this stuff is sort of subconscious. It's not really spoken.
Yeah, I mean, if it's interpersonal stuff, either between the people at the table or between the characters, you'll know, this guy tends to play these kind of characters, so I'm going to make a character that would fit with his general playstyle.
I see. Just take my Monday group for instance. I have one guy. He's a definitely hack and slasher. He shows up to the games day. He sits down. Sets down his Mountain Dew and stuff. He's like, okay, I kill it. Basically, formatting an idea that okay, this guy likes to kill stuff. He likes to. That's how he vents from his stressful job. And if there has to be at least a good portion of the section of the game is combat, or at least 40% of the combat, and those are the moments he's really going to be interested. And when it's more politics and role playing and interacting with NPCs, he tends to sit back. He'll play with his cell phone or something because he's just really not into it. And so we know that about this guy. So we always try to incorporate combat into pretty much every campaign we run.
Yeah. And in my case, I'm the exact opposite, where if there is combat, I will be bored if it lasts more than 2 or 3 rounds.
Yeah. So those are the things that I guess you have to take into account. What
kind of players do you have? What kind of games do they like?
Yeah.
And then if it's a new group or if it's a new setting like Changeling or Mage that is really different from what you've tried before, you go over, this is what I like about games in general or about this particular setting, and this is the aspects I want to focus on and the kind of game I want to run, and then you make sure everyone else is cool with that, and if they aren't, you try and find a compromise.
Yeah, that really would have helped me out, I think, with my Changeling game, because the ideas that I had and the themes that I liked, some of the other players really weren't on board with, and I think that was part of my frustration with it. It's like, wow, this really isn't feeling like the Changeling that I envisioned my campaign being. And but at the same time, I was willing to be open-ended and, you know, kind of riff off the characters and players' ideas.
Right, which was exactly what I did with Requiem for Rome until I realized that being open had stopped being fun and started being chore, and that's why I was having so much trouble coming up with plots and stuff.
Yeah, it really burned me out at the end, and attendance was always also a problem. So like, there were several problems with the campaign, and I don't know. I think what my problem was, I had such high hopes and such high expectations. It's like, oh, I love this setting. I'm really going to try to do it. I spent lots of time reading the other Splat books and trying to just absorb as much as I could. And then when it fell flat on its face, I was like, man.
I will be doing that if I ever run Song of Ice and Fire. I tried to run a play-by-post game that fell flat on its face, and so I've been through that experience. But that's one where I'm so into the setting. I have the campaign planned out, and I have a very strict social contract thing planned where you're going to start as sellswords. If they're not cool with that and they want to still play that setting, I will design a new campaign. Before that campaign, they have to be sellswords to start. So that's
a good premise, and then you can work off of that. You can build up from that. It sounds like.
Yeah, and I have the plan that it's going to be right before Balin Greyjoy's rebellion, and basically they're in a city. I guess it would probably be Lannisport. That would make most sense. Where Tywin Lannister has called them to an audience to basically offer them to go in and be double agents in Balin Greyjoy's court.
That sounds awesome.
He figures out that being himself, he figures out that, hey, this guy's probably going to rebel soon, and if so, I need to have some spies in his court. But at that point, it basically becomes open-ended, where how they go about learning things, how they go about interacting, is all up to them. And heck, even if they want to convert, basically I'm going to make the Iron Islands culture very cool, like particularly with them being sellswords. They're probably very survival of the fittest-ish.
Yeah.
Which would fit with the Iron Islands. So
there's a possibility for them switching houses, essentially,
or switching sides, and then
sides.
At the end, it sort of verges back to a railroadish thing where either Tywin Lannister knights them and gives them land, or Balin Greyjoy knights them and gives them land. But either way, they end up as a noble house.
That sounds like a great idea for a game. I wish you all the best. You were the inspiration for me reading through the Song of Ice and Fire, the Game of Thrones book, the D20 version, and
yep. And even though I don't have anyone who's read the books yet, I know I have a couple of people who are really into D6 systems and fantasy settings, so I figured, awesome, because the Green Ronin version is D6 based. So.
Oh, okay. Is it a lot like the sort of the open D6, the Star Wars?
I don't know. I've never read open D6 stuff, but I think so.
Okay, that's cool.
And I hope so. That's what they like, so I hope it is.
So it sounds like I've definitely experienced the downside of not doing a social contract beforehand. It sounds like you've kind of had the same problems.
I've had the same problems. I've had brief experience with my short-running Changeling game of the good side of it when you actually do it right.
That's cool. So when you run, have you ever actually sat down and actually done like a formal social contract yet? Or is this something that's going to be happening in the next campaigns that you're going to be starting?
It's going to be happening in the next campaign.
Okay.
I've participated in it. I've had people do it to me with the Changeling thing where someone else was running it and did that and sat us all down and said, this is what we're doing, deal with it, and make characters that fit this.
So what did you think?
I've never actually been on the sort of proposing end of one of those.
So what did you think as being a player in a game with a social contract? Was that interesting? Did you feel limited?
I didn't really feel I felt like, I have limits, but knowing me, that's good, because otherwise I'll make somebody like my vampire anarchist character who just doesn't work. I mean, he worked in a vampire game because it's a very individual game, and you're supposed to not like each other much, but for any other game, I would have made somebody equally that extreme and who didn't fit. So having someone flat out say, you need to make characters that fit, even though it's common sense and you all know it, I tend to push the envelope on what's acceptable. So I would have thought this character fits, and then they didn't.
Well, from my other videos that I have a tendency to do the same thing, where I'll play chaotic characters, or I'll sometimes just do wacky things that I I think are fun, but they can sometimes be damaging to the game maybe, or at times I might become even a spotlight hog. I've been trying to really stay away from those aspects of things. So I think personally, if I've never had anybody have a social contract with me, as a player, I've never played in a game like that. But I think it would actually help me be less chaotic as a player.
Yeah, it did for me, although, well, sort of, until the second session when I decided which made, my thing is I'm chaotic, but I always find it in-character justification, like with the bard who went insane because he saw his friends get eaten by a brain. It's like, oh, I decided, like, out of nowhere that session that he was going to do that, but all the behavior between the brain eating and now has been consistent with him being insane anyway. So, and it was a perfect point where he would go insane. So, and with the ogre who went into the hedge, whatever.
Yeah, you said he got high on glamour, and then he just wandered into the hedge and never came back. Huh?
Well, it's more than that. We were investigating stuff. An Autumn Court person came up to me and was talking to me about stuff, about how these people we were investigating were seen in the hedge and people were disappearing and stuff. So, and then I got fired up. I can't remember exactly what pissed my character off, but it was something, and I'm Summer Court Ogre, so I'm pretty wrath, and my vice is wrath, so I'm very easy to piss off.
Yeah, pretty much.
But the doctor the psychiatrist PC was basically saying, you need to calm down, you're going insane, you need to stop, come have a session with me, and I kept going, if I want your help, I will ask for it, now leave me alone, and eventually I got so pissed off, I decided, well, he's going to just go to a strip club, get some desire glamour, and chill out. Unfortunately, he happened to get high on it, so basically it was described as the equivalent of a pot high.
I see.
And so I thought, well, I feel like I'm invincible, I'm not worried anymore, and it seems like everything that we've been investigating is pointing towards the hedge. Simple solution for high brain, walk into hedge, wander around, see what you can beat up.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so again, it's crazy, but it made perfect sense at the time. I just saw the high as like a chance to be chaotic and get away with it because it made sense.
Yeah, I really think that just with talking with you, I think, like you were saying, some of these things I've done already, I just didn't have a name tag for them, and I think I've been gaming with the same sorts of people, so like I said, it's just like more subconscious. We just know how to do some of these things. But there are definitely other things that, especially the Changeling game, I played with players that I wasn't used to. There were new players. There were just several people that I didn't know personally really at all. The first time I met them was sitting down playing the game. So because I think that probably made it worse because I didn't even have those experiences with them in the past. So
yeah.
I really think that social contract really would have helped.
And I have never done this, but I've seen, and I ended up not getting into the group that did it, but the best way of dealing with that, I think, is have like a questionnaire or something, either maybe a talking session or a questionnaire for new people saying, like, what kind of player are you, and going through stuff like that is kind of basic social contract stuff, so you'll know whether their style will fit with the rest of the group and let them know the kinds of people you have in your group and the kind of game you're running, kinds of games you tend to run, so that you'll know if this person is going to fit. And that I think would be better than sitting them down, expecting to play the game, and then going over at the table all this stuff, and then finding out they're completely against the grain of the rest of your group.
Yeah, so there's more interaction, I guess, with a questionnaire than other things. We're about ready to get up towards like the half-hour mark. Is there any is there any sort of closing thoughts you want to have? I'm trying to think what else to talk about now.
There better not be, at least on my end, because otherwise it will never end.
So social contracts, it's nice that I have sort of a name for them now. I think I'm going to try to think about them more.
And this way you can present it to your group as, we're going to have a social contract, here's the clauses of it. We can deal with, not like as an ultimatum, like you will sign this or you will leave, but but like, here's what I'm thinking of doing. We should have something with this general framework. We can negotiate individual things in it.
Yeah, I think that's very important, sort of like a give and take on different portions of it. But
yeah, obviously you don't want to give them an ultimatum or they'll all leave. Even if they like the stuff in the contract, they'll leave by virtue of the fact that you gave them an ultimatum.
Well, I really enjoyed the conversation. I'm glad that this experiment is kind of working out pretty good.
And I will look forward to seeing this on your channel and probably watch the half hour again for the virtue of the fact that it's now up.
So yeah, I'm probably gonna be releasing this on May the 4th. So all right, everybody.
Yep. Well, I have contributed my, or at least one. I'll probably do another, but I've at least contributed something to the day now.
All right, would you like to sign off?
No, I never sign off anyway. I have nothing to sign off with.
All right, everybody. So we'll talk to you guys later, and have a good one.